Yes, can do.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you. We're now recording.
Right, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of Gedling Borough Council Planning Committee. My name is Councillor John Truscott, and I am Chair of the Planning Committee. Statutory webcasting notice. I must remind you that the audio of this meeting is being live broadcast on the Council's website, and the video of the meeting will be published after the meeting and will be available on YouTube. The last committee meeting has so far scored 18 hits. Okay, I'd like to introduce the officers from Gedling Borough Council who will be providing support during the meeting. These are from the Planning Department, Mike Avery, who's the Assistant Director, Planning and Regeneration. Kevin Cartwright, Principal Planning Officer, and Nigel Bryan, Principal Planning Officer. From our legal department, we have Sarah Pregon, a solicitor. From Democratic Services, we have Kate Goodall, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to the Committee, and Caroline McCleary, also a Democratic Services Officer. A few more preliminary notices. All members of the committee, please ensure that their microphones are switched off or muted at all times when they are not required to speak, and only switch on, unmuted, when they're called on to speak and they speak clearly and distinctly into the microphones. When the council is called on to speak, will they please limit their contributions to 3 minutes or less in order that everyone gets a fair chance to air their views. And I'm sure you can see by the length of tonight's agenda, that's more important than usual. Some changes to normal procedure, obviously this being a virtual committee rather than not a genuine one, but a sort of flesh and blood one in the council chamber. Under apologies for absence and substitutions, the clerk of the committee will introduce all councillors who have registered their attendance, as well as apologies and substitutions. At that point in the agenda, when I would normally ask for a proposer and seconder from the floor, to simplify things, I will propose each item on the agenda as chair, and Councillor Paul Wilkinson will second as vice chair. This is in no way an indication of approval or otherwise of any proposal or application by either of us, but merely a means of expediting the proceedings. When it comes to that point on the agenda, when I would normally open up the meeting for contributions from the floor, instead, the clerk of the committee will ask councillors in alphabetical order to make their contributions, questions, etc. Please once again observe the 3-minute time limit. When it comes to the vote on the recommendation at the end of any item, it will be similarly conducted. I hope you've all received your supplements to the main agenda papers with plans, elevations and photos of the various planning applications, but the officers will be presenting those on screen for you anyway. And finally, there will be a short comfort break after item 7 on the agenda. Right, before we actually start on the agenda, I've made one alteration to the order to enable a resident objector to participate by telephone on agenda item 14. I'm going to deal with that as the first substantive item on the agenda. Okay. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence and substitutions.
Okay, so we've received apologies from Councillor Chris Barnfather and Councillor John Parr, and Councillor Sam Smith will be substitute.
Okay, thank you. Second item is to prove as a correct record the minutes of the meeting.
Can I just take the attendance chair? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun there. Sorry.
Yeah,
Kate,
if I can just take attendance. So Councillor Truscott.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor Michael Adams.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Peter Barnes.
Present. what you moved it for.
Councillor Davis Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Elwood.
Present.
Councillor Hope.
Present.
Councillor Keneally.
Present.
Councillor Lawrence.
Present.
Councillor Miller. Not in attendance. Councillor Paling.
Present.
Councillor Scroggy.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Second item is to approve the correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of September, which you'll find on pages 5 to 16 of your agenda papers. I will move as chair and ask Paul Wilkinson to second as vice chair.
Seconded.
Thank you. Please indicate if there's anything in there that you don't approve of, rather than go through the list, because otherwise we'll take it as read. Are we all happy that it's an accurate record? Okay. Planning Committee protocol, which you'll find on pages 17 to 19 of your agenda papers, which I'm sure you've all read and understood. Third item on the agenda is declaration of interest. I will declare a collective and non-pecuniary interest on behalf of all members on items 7, 10 and 13, as the council owns the application site and has made the planning applications. And on items 8 and 9, as I understand, the council has the benefit of servitude affecting the land subject to those applications.
Councillor Truscott, Councillor Wheeler has his hand raised.
Thank you,
Yeah, I'm on the understanding that as a cabinet member that I have to declare predetermination on items 7, 8, 9 and 10.
Okay, so we will be not taking part on the debate on those items and not voting on them. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I saw there was some advice given around decisions that cabinet might have made on those items, so I'm going to declare predetermination. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wheeler, thank you for that. Anybody else has any declarations of interest?
Councillor Truscott, I think Councillor Barnes may be trying to say something as well.
Okay, I can't see it, but Councillor Barnes, would you like to speak?
I would declare an interest on same as what Andrew's just said, we've been a cabinet member on the market and the other one as well. Thank you.
Square.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Barnes, thank you very much. Does anybody else want to declare? Okay. So the first substantive item on the agenda is agenda item 14. Application number 2020/0828, 72 to 74 Westdale Lane East, Gedling. Section 73, application to vary condition 2 of permission 2017/0157 to erect 10 apartments, which you'll find on page 122 of your agenda papers. Now we have a speaker on this item, Mr. Howard Snowden, who is the resident objector, who will be making his objections by telephone.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Sorry, it's Caroline. I'm just going to attempt. I'm just going to attempt in the background to contact Mr. Snowden, who is the resident objector, and it's because it's by telephone, I have to contact him. So I'm just going to put those details in now. If you can just bear with me while I do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
Hello.
Hello, is that Mr. Snowden? Mr. Howard Snowden?
It is, dear.
Oh, lovely. You're through to the planning committee, and I'm going to pass you over to the chair, Councillor Truscott.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Good evening, Mr. Snowden.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I hope you are as well and keeping safe.
Just about, thank you. Yeah, just about.
Okay, your objection to this particular application, 72 to 74 Westdale Lane East. So you have got 3 minutes to explain to us what your objections are to this application.
Right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Howard Snowden, and I live next door to the property in question for 50, and I've lived here for 51 years. 10 number heat pump units are proposed at the rear of this property. Each unit output is 40 decibels. If you multiply this by 10 units, it equals 400 decibels. Potentially, if they're all on at the same time, this could be a problem. The nearest units will be 20 foot from my bedroom window. Yes, 20 foot from my bedroom window. This, coupled with 20 kitchen and bathroom extraction units all on the rear of this build, is potentially a high noise threat. As I have COPD, I have to sleep with my bedroom window open, and any noise from the output of these units, no matter how small, will have an impact on not just my sleep pattern, but my neighbours as well, as there is nothing at all at the moment. The positioning is acoustically wrong, and the developers have already jumped the gun and wired up for these units. Without permission, it certainly makes you wonder how this could happen. The position of the units is just so wrong acoustically. There isn't any bedrooms on the rear of these premises, so they have positioned these so their residents do not have their sleep disturbed. Alternatively, these units could be placed on Bolton Avenue on the ground and boxed over. They have taken our sunshine away. Please do not let them take our peace away as well. And as well, I have to add this, we were told that planning notice was posted on Bolton Avenue, but nobody actually saw this at all. Thank you very much. Good evening and stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Snowden. That was concise and to the point.
Right. Okay.
Right. I would like to ask Mr. Mike Avery to just give us a bit of an introduction on this item, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The development is nearing completion, and the applicant is seeking to make minor amendments to the approved plans, primarily to permit the installation of air source heat pumps to be positioned on the external elevations of the building, but other minor alterations are proposed, including amendments to fenestration, an additional roof light, and changes to the adjoining ground to create a level access. The proposed changes to the development have been assessed in the report in light of relevant development plan policies and are considered to be acceptable. The air source heat pumps have caused concern to local residents, including Mr. Snowden. I would, however, like to reassure members that the operation of the proposed units has been carefully considered by our environmental health team, and they are content that the units should not have an adverse impact upon the occupants of surrounding properties. Further to the publication of the report, I can advise that the case officer has also sought additional reassurance from the environmental health team, given the continuing concerns raised by local residents and a ward councillor. Approval of the amendments under the Section 73 procedure would result in the local planning authority issuing a fresh planning permission with the relevant conditions transposed from the extant permission. I recommend that permission is granted in accordance with the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So there we have the proposal, number 2020/0828, grant permission to install air source heat pumps onto an existing building. I will formally move this application as chair and ask Councillor Wilson to second as vice chair.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll call of councillors.
Councillor Adams.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
Just a minute. Nothing to add.
Thank you. Councillor David Ellis.
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you. Yes, I do have some comments, if I may. I've got concerns that obviously Mr. Snowden has referred to with regard to the noise for one at Bolton and also 76 Westdale Lane. The units are going to be sited very close to these properties, and we're talking about certainly between next to 76 Westdale, the distance of the length of a small room. So they are going to be very close to residential properties. Environmental Health have done a desktop calculation to assess the level of noise, and it's acknowledged that the level of noise will be low. The assessment states just below 40 decibels, and we have had some extra information on how that's been calculated, and it is quite complicated to actually work out how the figure has been derived, but it obviously as the distance goes from the units, the sound reduces exponentially. So I kind of understand that. The bigger problem, I think, is the fact that the noise is going to be continuous, and it particularly in the evening and at night, when we're talking about maybe a cold night or a hot night, when the unit's going to be working almost continuously, either to cool the building down or to heat it up. So that, I think, is the issue. It's the continuity of the noise at a time when it's very quiet and there's very little background noise. And I myself have some experience of this because I live next door to an electricity substation, and you do get the hum from that, even with the windows closed. Some of the objections are referring to the fact that the units have been sited to the rear of the apartments, and I think that's probably the worst place to put them, if only because there's less background noise from the traffic on our Bolton Avenue and Westdale Lane. And there's also a possibility that with the L shape of the apartments, that there could be a sort of an amplifier effect to the noise. It's difficult to tell really, but it's a possibility. So in a sense, it would have been more sensible to put the units at the front of the apartments, and the residential properties on the other side of Westdale Lane and Bolton are much further away, so they wouldn't, the chance of any noise would have been less, and there would have been more background noise from the traffic. So all in all, I have some concerns about the application, and I'm currently feeling as if I shouldn't really support it as it stands. So thanks for that.
Councillor Hope.
Yeah, actually, Councillor Elwood said more or less what I thought when I was reading through it. Quite often, people who write in with objections and suggest an alternative are actually right. If there is no reason at all why these units can't be moved to the front of the building, and by the sound of it, there is no reason, would it not be sensible for us to say, yeah, have your heat pumps, but can you site them at the front of the building? This would satisfy the neighbours, and I take on board what Councillor Elwood's saying. A continuous hum, even with the windows closed, is disturbing. but if, as Mr. Hilton or whatever his name was, has COPD, and he does have to sleep with his windows open, then what you're saying to this gentleman is, well, yes, it's only a low hum, but it is going to be all night long. I find that quite difficult, that we're sort of saying, well, it's only a minor inconvenience, so we'll go along with it. When actually, if he's right, by moving these heat pumps to the front of the building, there won't even be a minor inconvenience. And I agree with Councillor Holwood, just on that basis, I think we ought to reject this and say, come back with a plan which is more acceptable to the neighbours and works for you. Thank you.
Councillor Keneally?
Nothing further to add.
Councillor Lawrence?
No comments.
Councillor Paling?
I didn't quite understand what Andrew said about the further information for the noise calculations. On the residents' calculations, it would seem to be immense, but we've been told that the health officer has assessed the technical data and considers, even if all units were switched on, it would not be unacceptable. How do we square that circle? I'm sorry, I just didn't quite understand that.
Decibels aren't due. If you add decibels, if you've got something giving out 40 decibels and there's 10 of them equal 400 decibels, that's not the way the scale works.
Yeah, I would concur absolutely with Councillor Truscott. I just wanted to add some further clarification. So there's been comments about the siting of the units. I think from a visual amenity perspective, siting the units on the front elevation, I think that there would be some concerns in that regard, because they will be very prominent on the front and the side elevation. Just in relation to noise, if there was an issue, and an issue is not expected going forward, then under environmental health legislation, if it could be proven that a nuisance was created or that there was an issue, action could be taken. I just wanted to add that clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Scroggy?
Yeah, the question I was actually going to ask, Mr. Avery's actually just answered it regarding environmental health enforcement in the future. But, I'm quite content now that he's answered that.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler?
No further comments, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Kate. I'm satisfied with the reassurances given by the environmental health officers. Thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Kate. When residents object to things being built in front of their house, we tell them they're not entitled to a view. And now that we're asking as a council for this applicant to move those pumps, we're saying that it won't look very nice on the front. Well, I'd rather it not look very nice on the front, but the residents of the Phoenix ward be able to get to sleep at night when they have to sleep with their window open. So the Environment Health Officer says that the units, if all switched on the same time, should not impact. What assessments were done for the other locations, and why aren't we pursuing that? Another question is, why wasn't this on the original plan? I think it's disgraceful that we're saying they're on the back because they won't look nice on the front. We should vote against it and tell the applicant to come back once they move to the other side. Thank you.
Councillor Truscott?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Kate.
Okay, would anybody else like to come back? Okay, thank you.
Okay, if everyone has finished, so nobody's got any follow-up questions, is everybody content that I move to the vote?
Am I able to come back? Or?
Sorry?
I put my hand up. I don't know if it works.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see. You weren't on the screen.
All it was Mr. Avery mentioned about if it's passed, then we can go down the environmental health route if there is a problem. But that seems a little bit sort of kind of almost like having to solve a problem that we ourselves created. And also, if we pass this tonight, are we also liable for any issues with environmental health? Would we be legally be liable if there was a problem with it? Because we've kind of gone along with creating the environmental nuisance to start with. So I don't know. Just to my mind, it just seems a little bit cart before the horse approach. Thank you.
So if I could just clarify, Councillor Elwood, we're not envisaging a problem with these units on the basis of the information which has been provided and the assessment that's been undertaken by the environmental health team. However, if there was a problem, then the assurance that I can give to members, if there was a problem and that can be evidenced, then we could take action under other legislation to deal with noise nuisance.
Anyone else wish to come back? So I'll proceed to the vote.
Councillor Adams has raised his hand.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Mike, can I just final piece of confirmation that the total output of DB is 40. That's it. Not per machine. The total output of 10 machines going continuously is 40 decibels. Is that as you understand it? Thank you.
So I'm not a noise expert, Councillor Adams. So we've taken advice from the Environmental Health Service, but I would absolutely concur with the comments made by Councillor Truscott that in terms of calculating noise, you wouldn't multiply the 40 by 10. And my understanding would concur with your understanding, Councillor Adams, that it's around 40 decibels, and that will be an acceptable level of noise.
Anybody like to come back?
Thank you.
Okay. So you can move to the vote. So you'll find the recommendation on page 128 of your agenda papers to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed. And I'll ask Kate to run through the roll call of councillors to record their votes, please.
Okay, thank you. After I call your name, could you please state for, against or abstain? Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Barnes. Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor David Ellis.
For.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
For.
Councillor Elwood.
Against, and if I could have my vote recorded in the minutes as against, I'd be grateful as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
Against.
Councillor Keneally.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
For, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Paling.
For.
Councillor Scroggy.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Truscott.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Thank you very much. So now we go on to agenda item 4, application number 2020/0475, land at Glebe Farm, Burton, Joyce. Application for approval of reserved matters, erection of up to 14 dwellings, which you'll find on page 22 of your agenda papers. Okay, we have a speaker on this item, Mr. Frank Taylor, who is the applicant. Is Mr. Taylor there?
Do we have Mr. Taylor?
You
Mr.
do.
Frank Taylor. Oh, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
You're speaking as the applicant on the development at Glebe Farm, and you've got 3 minutes to support your application.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everybody. We've bent over backwards to work with the officers on this application, and it's been going on since May. We're supposed to hear back in August. Obviously, we've made various amendments as requested by the officer, from reducing plots 1 to 5, reducing heights, reducing the number of bedrooms, increase the amount of studies that we've done. And at the last minute, last Friday, we had my team had a notification about a verbal amendment that might be before you this evening into the insistence that there aren't any gates on the property. There are existing gates there anyway, and we feel that this is a last-minute addition, and it's something that we're not willing to accept. We've absolutely bent over backwards to work with officers on this, and respectfully we ask that the committee adopts the Grants Plan Commission in accordance with the original officer's report to the committee, and please ignore the verbal additional conditions that have been bounced on us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Very brief and concise. I now ask Nigel Bryan, Principal Planning Officer, to introduce this application.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the approval of reserved matters to the erection of 14 dwellings pursuant to the Outline Permission 2016-0306. As a result, the matters under consideration as part of this application are layout, landscaping, scale and appearance. As part of the outline application, it was determined that very special circumstances had been demonstrated to allow the erection of 14 dwellings, and this is not an opportunity to reconsider the principle of development, rather the previously mentioned reserved matters. The committee report largely focuses on the impact on the openness of the greenbelt and looks to achieve a reduction in built footprint and volume over and above the existing, which was a primary reason why the outline was granted permission. To consider that the application before members achieves this. 10% open space is to be provided on site over 2 areas, along with 5 car parking spaces for the public near to the site entrance. In respect of design, the units when entering the site will be more modest in scale so as to respect the character of the area and to take into account the change of levels, which is quite significant. Dwellings near to the existing brick-built barns will largely be reflective in terms of design of converted agricultural buildings, and toward the end of the site, the dwellings will largely be larger in scale and based around a green space. In respect to amenity, the distance to existing dwellings is acceptable, and permitted development rights for future extensions are intended to be removed. Taking into account the planning history of the application site, it's considered the reserved matters application complies with the outline and it would enhance the openness of the greenbelt. The design and layout of the scheme is acceptable and will respect the character of the area and residential amenity. And furthermore, as mentioned by Mr. Taylor just earlier, we are recommending that an additional condition is added to those outlined in the committee report, and this is largely to reduce, to remove potential gates to the access to the sites to ensure that the site is easily accessible to the wider general public. So the condition that we're intending to add, and I'll read it, is notwithstanding the information shown on the approved site plan drawing reference 812.11602 PL03B, there shall be no gates or other physical barriers erected across the shared private road at any time. As indicated by Mr. Taylor, they believe that such a condition isn't necessary because they contend that the policy doesn't require the space to be open to the public, but just to be open space. as officers, we feel that it is imperative that the gates are removed and the wider public open space is fully accessible to the public, whether it be on foot or whether it be by a car. As a result, we are recommending approval of the reserved matters subject to conditions outlined on pages 31 to 33, plus the additional condition that I just mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Nigel. So we have a proposal, Reserved Matters Application 2020/0475 for up to 14 dwellings. I'll formally move the application as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll call of councillors. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask really a question. If we can just pop the aerial view of the site on screen, is that okay? Are we able to do that at request or? No?
Yes, Mr. Cartwright will be able to show you
fabulous.
the site, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Brilliant. Yeah, so I suppose the point I've sort of been looking at is the discussion here is obviously about the openness of the greenbelt, and I accept the fact that the built form in total will reduce the actual overall footprint of the existing buildings. What I will notice is that the current buildings obviously are as a single form, if you like, by the nature of the barns being together. On the new site location plan, sorry, if we could, there we go, lovely, look at that. You can see that actually that spreads out across the whole site now. Openness in the greenbelt, it means effectively that you've got a continual view into the countryside. I'm not quite sure, and I believe that definition is correct. I'm not quite sure by the addition, by transferring the built form, even though it's less, but over a wider distance, actually does that. So yeah, that's my only point on that side of things. The other side is around just obviously ensuring that we've got a note in the actual planning schedule as well, which talks about the excess water discharging onto site, and obviously ensuring. I noticed that there's an important condition in there that talks about that will be for the life of the application, that the discharge of water will go correctly off site and not onto the highway. So it's good to see that in there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Can you unmute, Councillor Barnes?
No comment. Press that one.
Thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I think the officers have worked well with the developers, and we've got an acceptable scheme, and I'm quite happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to support this with the addition of not gating this community. I see no reason for it. I see no reason to exclude the rest of the community from this area. So I'm more than happy to support the recommendations of the officers, including this additional one. Thank you. That's all I wish to say.
Thank you. Councillor Elwood.
Yes, notwithstanding the fact it was previously in Greenbelt, as I say, I can't see anything to object to on this one. As you said, the plans look quite nice, so I'll be happy to support it.
Councillor Hope.
Sorry, I hadn't got my mic switched on. Yeah, I'm prepared to support this, but I agree with Councillor Ellis. I have no wish to see gated communities start to be developed in this country. Thank you.
Councillor Keneally.
Nothing further to add.
Councillor Lawrence.
Only to say that I support the officer's recommendations, including the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Paling.
Yes, I support the application in line with the officer's recommendation. Page 26 states that provision of open space, it's a requirement for public open space, so that surely negates the reason for a gate at the beginning of the community. So I accept that new condition.
Councillor Scroggy.
No comment to make.
Councillor Wheeler.
Support the officer's recommendations. I also go with what Councillor Ellis was saying earlier around gated communities. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I support what's been said in terms of public open space. You know, public is public, and it's not going to be public if it's gated. But I do have a question for the officers, and that is, what, if any, implications do the developers' rejection of this condition have? You know, could this result in them appealing the granting of the permission, if you like, or just appealing the condition?
I think as officers, we're content for the condition to be added. If members agree, then it will be added to the decision notice. The applicants have the right of appeal against a particular condition. That'll be up to the applicants whether or not they choose to do that. But as officer level, we're content that it can be done, and they can appeal against that condition if they think, if they choose to do so.
Just to add further to Mr. Bryan's comment, what I would advise is that if the applicant did make an appeal, we're satisfied that we could defend that appeal. That there are grounds explained by Mr. Bryan for imposing the condition, and there are planning grounds for imposing that, and therefore we consider we've got the policy basis to support to defend any appeal that is made.
Thank you, Mike.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Kate. I wasn't a member of this council when outline planning permission was given, and we should be protecting the greenbelt, as has already been mentioned. Page 32, one of the conditions is that none of the dwellings should be occupied until we're satisfied with the provision to prevent the discharge of surface water. I've seen firsthand the surface water running off the green space onto Bulkett Drive and Woodside Road, and the damage that causes with flooding residents' houses. And as Councillor Michael Adams outlined earlier, yes, it is using less space, but actually it's stretched over a bigger period, a bigger space. And that flooding that happens to the residents that I represent on Bulkett Drive and Woodside Road is already happening with the green space that absorbs the water. So once all these driveways are in and these houses are in, the damage could potentially be bigger to the residents there with runoff of surface water. So I'd want it inspecting that we're satisfied with the provisions that are put in place before we grant this permission.
Go on.
Councillor Truscott.
Yes, it's a very attractive development. There's no doubt about that. But as has already been stated, public open space is public open space, and having gates there, as has been mentioned, negates that. We do not want to see gated communities proliferating in Gedling, and I therefore fully support the addition of the condition that has been added verbally by Nigel Bryan.
Okay, would anybody like to come back?
Move, we take the vote.
Can I just ask? Can I just ask? Is the officer absolutely certain, because I don't know about the flooding there. Is the officer absolutely certain that measures have been put in place that are going to be built in with this development that will actually cope with the excess water and probably improve the flooding in the locality? Or are our concerns about flooding quite justified, and it's going to make matters worse for all the people around.
You want to come back on that, Mike?
Nigel, I'm happy to take this question.
Okay.
So in terms of the outline planning permission, I understand there's a condition requiring drainage details to be submitted. Because the site is being developed, there will be drainage measures which are put in place. So we've got the planning condition. That is one control that we've got, that we require details of drainage measures to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. This is also subject to control under the building regulations as well. So there are, having regard to the building regulations, there's a requirement for the properties to have adequate drainage before they can get signed up under the building regulations. So there are two controls. There's planning and there's also building regulations to ensure that flooding or surface water runoff isn't increased, and that is effectively mitigated by the development.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Smith, did you want to come back?
I think Councillor Adams had his hand raised first.
Yeah,
Kate.
he's lowered it again.
Oh,
so.
right, okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Mike, for that answer. What powers as a council do we have to go out? So if this is granted and the houses are built, what powers does this council have to go out and check that? Because that will become a highways problem. That will become a county problem if flooding is caused. So what powers do we have to go out there and enforce correct drainage? Because I'm telling you, it's a disaster now with what's there. So if this gets granted, what powers do we have to check it?
First and foremost, the development would need to be constructed in accordance with the approved details. So we could take enforcement action through planning if the development wasn't constructed in accordance with the approved drainage details. Secondly, you refer to potential flooding onto the highway. The Highways Authority could take action if there was increased surface water being discharged onto a public highway. They could take action in that regard. And if the drainage measures weren't implemented in accordance with the building regulations approval, action could be taken in that regard as well. It wouldn't get to that stage in terms of building regulations because the properties wouldn't be signed off either by the local authority or by an approved inspector if they didn't provide the appropriate measure to deal with surface water at each individual property. So I think there's actually three levels of control which I've highlighted there.
Okay.
Councillor Adams, you have your hand up. Would you like to come back?
Yeah, sorry about the up and down of the hand there. Yeah, I just want to just double check something with Mr. Avery on Nigel actually on the actual aspect of is this still in the green belt or has this now been taken out of the green belt? It is this very simple question really.
Okay, so I'll take this question if I may. The site is still located within the green belt. When granting the outline planning permission approximately 3.5 years ago, we as an authority accepted that there were very special circumstances to allow this development to proceed, and they're detailed in summary in the report. That there will be an improvement in terms of openness because the floor area will be reduced and also the volume will be reduced. So actually in the report, I think we refer to footprint and volume, both of those would be reduced. And we gave, as an authority, we gave significant weight to that. We also gave weight, from what I recall, to a reduction. It would remove some buildings which were, causing harm to the character of the area. So the farm buildings are becoming increasingly dilapidated. And also we gave weight to the fact that an additional car parking is proposed on the existing highway to mitigate some existing highway impacts in terms of lack of off-street car parking. So they're 3 of the very special circumstances which were advanced. Mr. Bryan, were there any other very special circumstances on which you will recall that were considered?
I don't believe so. Possibly just I think there was a bit of conflict between the agricultural use being so close to the residential units as well, and now I think they're going to be a lot more neighbourly uses in terms of just being residential adjacent to residential as well.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else want to come in before I move to the vote?
Now, where do we press now?
No. Right, the recommendation is on page 31 of your agenda papers, and it is to grant reserved matters approval, subject to the conditions listed, plus the condition added verbally by Nigel Bryan during the course of this presentation. I'd like Kate to run through the roll call of councillors to record their votes, please.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor David Ellis.
For.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
For.
Councillor Elwood.
For.
Councillor Hope.
For.
Councillor Keneally.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
For.
Councillor Paling.
For.
Councillor Scroggy.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Truscott.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Thank you very much. Right, let's press on with agenda item 5, application number 2020/0726, land on Flats Lane, Calverton. This is a section 73 application for variations of conditions 8 and conditions 3, 16 and 17 of outline permission 2018/1143, which you'll find on page 36 of your agenda papers. We have a speaker on this item who is Sally Smith from Bellway Homes, the applicant. Do we have Sally Smith there? Of your agenda papers. Hello, Sally Smith.
Hello.
Hi there. Well, welcome to tonight's meeting of Gedling Borough Council Planning Committee, and you're here to support your application on Flats Lane, and you've got 3 minutes to do it in, if you please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sally Smith. I'm Senior Planning Manager for Bellway Homes and the applicant for this Section 73 application. Thank you for allowing me to speak at this evening's meeting. I don't want to waste your time repeating what your officer has carefully and factually reported in the committee report. However, I do want to briefly mention a couple of pertinent points relating to the proposed development. At the starting point, I would like to reaffirm the collaborative approach we have taken to working with the council with this site. We acquired the land this year following the grant of outline planning permission and met with the council officers to discuss amendments to the scheme. While we are committed to delivering high quality homes and working with local planning authorities to deliver appropriate homes and neighbourhoods. You will most likely be aware that we have a Reserve Matters application for this site submitted at present. The Reserve Matters application presents our detailed scheme for the site. However, this Section 73 application is necessary to facilitate some amendments to the approved illustrative master plan to make our Reserve Matters application deliverable. This application proposes some minor amendments in respect of access and trees. The number of vehicular access points from Flats Lane are proposed to be reduced from five adopted access points, which was originally approved as part of the outline planning permission, down to 2 adopted highway access points and 2 private drives. All access points meet the required visibility displays and do not conflict with existing accesses on Flats Lane. And this has been confirmed by Nottinghamshire County Council Highways Department. A revised arboricultural assessment has been submitted which proposes the removal of the poplar trees located on the southern boundary. These trees have been identified as category C trees and are of low quality, which your tree officer has agreed with. For technical reasons, these trees cannot be retained in the future development of the site due to the risk posed with building close to trees of this height, both for construction workers and future occupiers of the development. The loss of these trees will be mitigated through additional planting as part of the landscape scheme submitted with the reserved matters. Finally, it is proposed to vary condition 16 to remove the requirement to supply details of a management company for private roads and open spaces alongside the submission of reserved matters. At this particular early stage of the planning application process, these details are unknown. However, information is captured through a clause in the existing Section 106 agreement, and as such, the condition isn't necessary. As highlighted, these amendments have been made in collaboration with your planning officer and will facilitate a deliverable, high-quality scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just inside the 3 minutes. Okay. I'll ask Nigel Bryan now to elaborate on this application for us.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I think Sally has covered most of the points I was going to raise. Outline plan of permission in place for 84 dwellings in this application to vary for the conditions to allow 4 access points rather than the 5 approved onto Flats Lane. A survey has also been submitted that looks to clarify whether or not it's acceptable to remove a number of trees to the southern boundary, primarily a line of poplar trees. In respect to highway considerations, the number of vehicle entrances to Flats Lane will reduce. They will not be opposite existing access points and all can achieve adequate visibility. No objection has been raised by the Highway Authority and the alteration is not considered to be detrimental to highway safety. In respect of trees, the arboricultural survey submitted by the applicant identifies that the poplar trees are classified as low quality with a life expectancy of between 10 and 20 years. The Council's tree officer does not consider them worthy of a TPO. With appropriate mitigation in form of alternative planting through the reserve matter stage, the loss could be mitigated against. As a result, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions outlined on pages 46 to 50 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the proposal is for a variation of conditions application 2020-0726 to an existing outline permission. I'll formally move it as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second as vice chair.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll call of councillors. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Nothing to add. Thank you, Kate.
Councillor Barnes.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
No comment to make. Thank you.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you. Yeah. My only slight concern is that the trees that are being removed don't, unless I'm wrong, don't appear to be replaced somewhere else on site. That was my only concern. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
I've got 1 or 2 things to raise. One of them is I'm never sure if they can be taken off and put on so easily, why we ever have conditions in the first place. I mean, condition 8 included details of a tree protection scheme in accordance with BS 5837/2012, which provides for the retention and protection of trees, shrubs and hedges on and adjacent to the site. That's been removed. I don't know why anybody would want to remove that. Surely that's something we want, but it's been taken out. Maybe it's because when you look at the plans and see what trees are being left on this bit of land, you'll find that I think it's just a couple of trees and they're actually taking out all the rest of the hedge and all the rest of the trees. I mean, that to me is a concern. You know, I looked at it and red was everywhere with a couple of green spots. We need to protect a protection scheme, and we need it in accordance with BS 5837. The officer doesn't actually mention that it has that effect. The second one I'd like to ask about is condition 16. The lady did mention it, but if we're going to have private roads, do you remember if we have private roads? Sorry.
Can people make sure
Councillor,
that they are muted while they are not required to speak?
Thank you. If we are going to have private roads, and as I say, remember, that means that they can be built to a standard which is lower than the standard required by a road that can be adopted. And I'm not sure we really want that in the first place. But if we are, then details of the proposed arrangements and plan for future management and maintenance of the proposed private roads, including associated drainage contained within the private part of the development, is important. And also in condition 16, that has been removed, and also details of the proposed arrangements and plan for future management and maintenance of any hedgerows and other vegetation located between roads, both existing and proposed, and the site boundary. Now, that has been removed. In fact, the only thing that's left in condition 16 is a detailed layout and bin storage locations. Now I'm assuming that these conditions were put in place for a reason. If there was no reason, fine, rub them out. But if there was a reason, I think we need to know what the reason was for them being in and how we can be so cavalier in just deleting them, because it annoys me intensely that that sort of thing happens. And it annoys me intensely that roads go from being adoptable to private and unadoptable. You know, I don't think that's a quality of design we should be supporting. And you will notice that the poplar trees, and I agree that they're rubbish trees, the poplar trees are on the south side of the development, which actually screened the three-storey flats, which are opposed in the neighbourhood plan, were opposed by me quite vehemently, you'll remember, are being taken down as well because they're being deleted. You know, you're looking at a development which is going to take down virtually every tree and hedge around that site, and so far hasn't given us what it's going to be replaced with, simply said, oh, well, there'll be a landscaping scheme. You know,
okay,
that concerns me.
Can we give the officers a chance to reply to that, please?
Yes, you can.
As part of the Reserve Matters application, they're going to identify the landscaping that would, in effect, replace that which is to be lost. So, you know, through that, when it comes to committee, for argument's sake, most likely in the new year, then we'll look to ensure that the loss of the trees is mitigated. In terms of the observations of our own tree officer, we didn't consider the poplars were worthy of a preservation. So I think if we were to get, you know, appropriate boundary treatment such as hedging and such like, and then that's likely to be acceptable. And in terms of replacement of the more mature trees, they're likely to be towards the north of the site, where the public open space is proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'd just like to further add, Chairman, that, you know, we have taken advice from the Highways Authority, and we've taken arboricultural advice as well in relation to the impact on trees. This would result in a new permission being issued. So we've considered the amendments in light of the relevant development plan policies. So this, you know, the variation to the conditions has been given detailed consideration, and we have sought that technical advice, you know, prior to putting this recommendation before members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Keneally?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence? Councillor,
No comment, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Paling?
No further comment.
Councillor Scroggy?
No comment to make.
Councillor Wheeler?
No comments, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
No further comments, thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Nothing other than to say, I'd like to see the trees replanted, as other people have mentioned. Thank you.
Councillor Truscott?
Nothing to add, thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Ellis has Councillor Rachel Ellis has her hand raised.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councillor Hope. I was somewhat bemused about the replacement of a road with a private drive. Now, I wonder if officers can respond in terms of what would the nature of these drives be. I mean, my understanding of a drive is something that leads up to your house. So are we talking about something like that, or actually are we talking about a private road, which won't be adoptable? Thank you.
Councillor Hope also has his hand raised.
Oh, I thought the officer was going to respond to that.
The two of the roads will be to adoptable standard and the others won't. So in effect, that would then come under the maintenance via the management company or the occupiers.
That's what I thought you'd say. So surely the bit which says details of the proposed arrangements and plan for future management and maintenance of the proposed private roads, including associated drainage contained within the private part of the development, should actually stay there then. That seems to me something that we wouldn't want to see removed, but it's going to be if we pass this tonight, unless we make as a condition that remains. And it's all very well saying that the trees will be planted under reserved matters, but I looked at the very original plans, and if you look, the only place they're planting any trees, as far as I can see, is in the very north corner of the site where the play area is. They talk about a possibility of replacing trees elsewhere, but on the original plans, we actually had the hedge along Flats Lane being retained and a footpath behind it. Now the hedge along Flats Lane is going completely. Things have changed in this development, and they may be small things to you, but to the people of Calverton, they're not small. And if we want, I think Boris Johnson said it, beautiful design, then actually we're going to have to look at these small things, and we're not doing if we just pass this carte blanche without saying, well, hang on, we put these conditions in for a reason, and at the moment there is no good reason to remove them. That is my view, and I'm sure it's the view of many people in Calverton.
Perhaps I can give some additional information in relation to management of the private road. So I believe it's addressed in the report, but it was also mentioned by the applicant when she addressed members at the beginning of this item. But in relation to management of those private drives, that is actually secured via planning obligations in the Section 106 agreement, which accompanies the Reserve Matters application. So under that Section 106 agreement, there is a requirement for the owner to submit a management scheme to the council, which the council has to approve, and then management of those roads must be taken in accordance with that management scheme. That includes provision of information regarding the management company and also a scheme of how they propose to maintain those roads and also finance that maintenance. So in terms of that condition, that is secured via a planning obligation under the 106 agreement, which will continue to bind the land and the owner.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just in terms of these private drives, there would be short roads, usually cul-de-sacs, so not local distributor roads. There will be short roads serving a limited number of properties, and the Highways Authority have considered this arrangement and they have no objection. Certainly if these were local distributor roads and there was going to be a significant amount of traffic which was passing over the roads, that would not be acceptable to have a private drive in that instance. So the Highways Authority have, clearly considered that.
Thank you very much, Mike. Right. We've all finished, so we're all content that I move to the vote.
I've still got my hand up.
Oh, not again.
What, again?
Well, yes, actually, yes, again.
How many bites of the cherry do you want, Councillor Hope?
I'm sorry that nobody else seems to be raising these issues, but I seem to think that private roads should serve only 4 or 5 houses. Actually, in this instance, you've got 7, you've got 8. And the second thing is that it's all very well saying that there's going to be a management scheme, but houses are built to last a long time. And I know of some places where there are private which are being managed by whatever management company it was, and the responsibility of the homeowners are getting into a terrible state because they don't want to do anything about them. Why are we allowed? I mean, it's all very well saying there's a management scheme. Does it last 10 years? Does it last 20 years? Does it last 50 years? I can't see any management company saying, you pay me this sum of money and I'll look after this road forever. That isn't going to happen. Doesn't matter which way you look at it. We want a road which can be adopted by the local authority, which can be maintained by the local authority. That's how you keep good roads in your area. And I'm sure there are schemes out there, but the fact of the matter is, if we have to have private roads, then for God's sake, keep the condition in place.
Fair comment.
Okay. Over to you, Chair.
I intend to move to the vote. The recommendation is on page 46 of your agenda. To grant outline planning subject to the conditions listed. And I'll ask Kate to run through the roll call of councillors to record their vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
4.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
Against.
Councillor Hope.
Against.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Paling.
4.
Councillor Scroggy.
Abstain.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
And Councillor Truscott.
4.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Thank you very much.
I think it's. I can't remember now when you said.
Can everybody make sure that they're muted unless they're required to speak, please? Okay, we move on to agenda item 6.
Wait a minute.
Is everyone muted?
Councillor Hope, could you lower your hand as well? We've still got it as raised, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Barnes, could you mute, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Agenda item 6, application 2020/0108, Red Hill Pavilion, Thornton Avenue, Red Hill. Change of use of pavilion building and groundsman's cottage to day nursery, which you'll find on page 52 of your agenda papers. As stated on your agenda papers, this application has been referred to full planning by the planning delegation panel to further consider its impact on the greenbelt and highway safety. We have two speakers on this item, and the first one is Philippa Fisher, who is a resident objector and whose objections will be read out by Caroline McCleary.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to read the statement out now. Thornton Avenue is not your usual small, quiet, rural residential street that would be an idyllic setting for a nursery. Quite the opposite. It is the two-way access to the extremely busy Hammond Farm industrial site, which is in operation 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. HGVs, farming vehicles and staff members' vehicles all use Thornton Avenue to access the site. Thornton Avenue is in no way adequate for this two-way farm traffic, and on a daily basis I witness the farm traffic, including HGVs and tractors mounting the pavements. I have previously supplied evidence of this. Due to the width of the road, it is absolutely impossible for the vehicles to pass one another without mounting the pavement. It would be negligent to increase traffic flow on Thornton Avenue by adding a nursery within this setting, as it would also increase pedestrian footfall to an already dangerous road and pavement. The current plans do not address the dangerous pavement on Thornton Avenue, which will be used by the nursery patrons. To access the new footpath that is being proposed, the nursery patrons have to use Thornton Avenue, and increasing traffic flow will increase the possibility of one of these vehicles mounting the pavement and hitting a pedestrian. The junction at the bottom of Thornton Avenue will not be able to cope with the 200 plus extra car movements per day that the nursery will generate. It is currently very difficult to exit onto the A60, and I despair at the thought of how difficult it will be with the extra traffic. I have concerns about the environmental impact this planning proposal will cause to the wildlife within this greenbelt area. The air quality is already low within the area, and increasing traffic flow will further compound this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have the applicant who is going to speak as well. Najwa O'Brien, I hope I pronounced that properly. Do we have Ms. O'Brien?
Hello. Hello.
Hello there. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Pleased to see you.
Yes.
Okay, so you have got, you're the applicant for this particular nursery, and so you've got 3 minutes to put your case to us.
Okay, sorry, Miss O'Brien, you wanted a 30-second reminder. I will let you know.
Brilliant.
Thank you
so much. Thank you. Good evening, committee members, chair. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak this evening. It's been a very long and heart-wrenching journey, so I'm happy to be here. First, I'd like to look at the point that the planners had regarding the parking and the green belt used for the parking in the proposal, and they didn't think it was under special circumstances. We want to keep the area as in keeping with the environment as we can. The small area that we want to use for the car park, we're going to use all materials to in keep with the, not to distract the way that we are in the countryside. But the fact that we are dealing with children, stressed families maybe dropping children off, children with disabilities, children with behavioural disabilities, we need to take this all into account to create a safer environment and a segregation of safety for that. Parents now come with more than one child to a setting to drop off. So there's so many different things that we do have to take into account, and that's what we looked at regarding using the green belt for the car park. The officers did look at using other areas on the other grounds, but this would take away from our learning classrooms that we wanted to create outside for the children. Working all the way through this pandemic and working for NHS NHS workers' children. Where we are now, we haven't got enough outdoor space. And regarding safety and health and safety, to give children enough space, this area and this opportunity is vital for their future and vital for childcare providers now. Leading on to that, in our area, we're working with the local authority. Recently, the Red Hill area has the lowest uptake of 2-year-old funding. Now, the government has put this funding in place for children that they feel it's vital for them to be in childcare and educational settings. We've started to reach out to these families now and have had really, really good response, just because we've taken that time and because they've not known that they're entitled to it. But we really do feel that this is what we're passionate about, to get every child into education and give them their best possible the start. Obviously, with the regeneration in the area, new housing developments just like less than 5 minutes away. There is childcare providers that have. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought somebody said something. There is childcare providers have been closing in the area, but there's still more houses that are being built for families. Again, another reason why this would be an amazing setting for new families moving into the area. Also.
30 seconds.
All right, okay. Also, we've been told in the last 2 weeks some news, because obviously we rent the space of the Scout Association, who've been amazing, but because of this pandemic and because of their falling numbers, if they don't actually get any more volunteers or get children into the Scout Association, they're going to have to close, which means that the 20 plus families that I care for, including vulnerable families, will not have a childcare provider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to pass over to Mike Avery to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Further to the publication of the report, it's been brought to my attention that a late submission has been circulated to members of the Planning Committee by the agent acting on behalf of the applicant, which, in summary, sets out why they consider to be very special circumstances relevant to the proposal. These are as follows: reuse and regeneration of a vacant and semi-derelict site, reuse of brownfield land, reduction in the likelihood of antisocial behaviour, provision of a new facility and business, employment of local people and the creation of apprenticeships, increased provision of early years provision, an opportunity to provide outdoor classrooms in a rural setting, an opportunity to create a COVID-19 resilient environment. Their existing facility is constrained, shared with other users and temporary. It will close without a suitable alternative, and the reuse of the building itself does not require permission. It's also stated that a 2-metre high fence would not require permission in any materials. It is not accepted that these amount to very special circumstances, and the position set out in the officer report remains unchanged. The applicant's agent has referred to factual inaccuracies in the report, namely that the proposed fencing will be a paladin fence and not a palisade fence. Paragraph 7.9 is inaccurate. Fencing of up to 2 metres in height does not need permission, and the information on trip generation is incorrect. The details in the report have been checked, and they are in accordance with the details provided by the applicant on the submitted plans and advice provided by the Highways Authority. In terms of the erection of boundary treatments, a 2-metre high boundary fence could not be erected adjacent to the bridleway under permitted development. The height will be restricted to 1 metre. So, having regard to the officer report, the MPPF and the local planning document policy 12, the reuse of a former building is appropriate development in the green belt, as is the proposed extension, which would increase the floor space by approximately 18%. so significantly less than the 50%. The extension will be single-storey in nature and would appear subservient to the host building. I'm therefore of the opinion that the extension would not have an undue impact on openness. The proposed use would not, however, be limited to the existing building. It is proposed to extend the curtilage by 730 square metres to create a car park extension and a new footpath extending some 100 metres adjacent to the existing bridleway to satisfy the Highways Authority. In addition, it's proposed to erect a 2.4 metre high security fence to the site. These aspects of the development are inappropriate, which is by definition harmful. The site will become more urban and engineered in appearance, and as detailed in the report, these aspects of the development are considered to have an undue impact on the openness of the green belt. The very special circumstances advanced by the applicant do not, in my view, outweigh the harm to the green belt. I recommend that permission is refused in accordance with the officer report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. So we have a proposal for a change of use, application 2020/0108. I'll formally move the application as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second as vice chair.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the detailed poll of councillors. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Kate, and thank you, Chairman, as well. Yeah, I mean, I have a few problems with this development, fall in line with what the planning department have said. The openness of the green belt, again, is something that I've discussed earlier, and in this case, this high fence that surrounds it, again, 2 metres and not in keeping with the rural environment. As you could see from that picture a second ago, you saw the post and rail fence, which is particularly prominent in most countryside locations. To replace that with a 2 metre high fence would be affecting the openness quite considerably. Obviously, I've got a concern as well about the bridleway that's going to be used. I appreciate it's always used, already used for tractors, as the objector mentioned, as well as other traffic. The issue with this, though, from a ward that has a number of bridleways, there's a lot of issues with once cars start to use them as well. And the big trucks tend to have, funnily enough, less of an impact on the road because of the nature of the consistent speed that they tend. When cars come into it, you tend to get a lot of kicked up dirt, which creates a lot of potholes and further problems. And the highway has to be brought up to a highway standard before highways will even look at adopting it. So again, there's a concern there for me as well. It is a site that's accessed 365 days a year. I think we've established that the actual development of the property is not a problem and is okay and doesn't cause the additional harm. But I think the greenbelt side of things alone, for me, well and truly means I will be voting against this application. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
Yes, I support the recommendation. I think this is a very, very busy road with Hammonds taking some big vehicles up that road there. And I think it would be a retrograde step to give planning permission for this business in this particular area. I know the area very, very well. I've known it all my life, and it is a very, very dodgy road up there. I remember when the high school had the school sports there, they had problems there, and I think Ammon's taking a lot of vehicles up there, and it would be a detriment respect, and I think we should not support this applicant. Thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you. The delegation panel decided to refer this to committee because there are different views as to whether very special circumstances exist. And we've seen from the report, and we've heard from the first two contributions, and the report clearly sets out the issues and the consideration and comes to a view that very special circumstances don't exist, which is a reasonable position to take. However, I think it's equally reasonable for the committee to decide that the proposal should be, the development should go ahead. And I've looked at the revised design and access statement and the letter that Mr. Avery referred to, And I'm coming to the view that I can't support the recommendation to refuse, and I'd want to oppose that. I think if I quickly summarise my thinking, as we've heard, the report accepts that the principle of the reuse of the building as a nursery is an appropriate form of development, and the proposed alterations improve the overall appearance. I agree it's a sympathetic development. The two main objections seem to be the provision of the car park and the erection of a fence. Now, we've seen there's evidence of damage to the building and antisocial behaviour, and I can't see any way in which this building could be brought back into use without security. So as well as the need for the nursery to be secure for the children, the building itself would be secure. So anybody bringing up a development here would have to provide that sort of level of security. And the car parking, the proposal is to use a small amount of agricultural land, which I don't think is used properly, for car parking. Now, normally we would require car parking, and I think we've heard it's essential for the operation of the nursery, but equally I think the residents of the developed part of Thornton Avenue would not be happy if we said that the nursery could open, but the cars could park on their street and walk down. We've heard that the bridle path is currently used by heavy farm vehicles and HGVs, so I can't see any problem with cars accessing the nursery. So on balance, and this is a balanced view, I take the view that the fencing and the car park are necessary to bring the building back into use, and therefore the proposal as a whole is appropriate. So I'll be voting against the recommendation to refuse planning permission, and if sufficient members agree with me, then what we could then do is if we vote down the proposal, and we can move an amendment to delegate responsibility to the Assistant Director to approve the planning application, subject to conditions. And I hope there's enough colleagues that think along those lines. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Yes, thank you very much. I've also looked very carefully at the papers that we've been sent, and I'm not about to reiterate what Councillor Ellis said, except that I agree with his views, and that does not mean that the judgment of the officers, is inappropriate. It's about looking at the facts before you and reaching a balance and a reasonable judgment. If I can add, this is going to provide our community with a much needed nursery and daycare provision. It's also going to be providing employment and apprenticeships for young people. And as such, I think that's extremely important and has to be put in the balance. And therefore, I am minded to oppose the recommendation on this occasion. Thank you.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you. I'm not. I'm thinking that there aren't any very special circumstances in this regard. Although I do have sympathy with the applicants if their current property is under threat. But we've always been very clear when we've been voting on applications in the green belt. It has to be really something particularly outstanding to allow a development in the green belt, and regrettably I think I would have to accept the recommendation on the report, and we'll be voting for the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Keneally.
Nothing further to add.
Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I've been a member of this planning committee on and off for over 20 years, and I very rarely go against the officer's recommendations. And even before Councillor Ellis spoke so eloquently, I was minded to vote against the officer's recommendation. And I've read the application thoroughly, and the officer's reasons for recommending refusal. But the two things that have persuaded me to vote against this is, one, I see that the Highways Authority have no objection, and two, I think that the social and educational use of the building far outweighs the normal planning conditions, and I believe that that is sufficient special circumstances for me to vote against. Thank you.
Councillor Paling.
Thank you. I too want to give more weight to the special circumstances than the officers have done. I'm very mindful of the existing building. I think the comments from Andrew seem to have ignored the fact that this has been a building for many years. And I do want to support the application rather than the officer's recommendations. The footpath will mitigate the issues that Peter Barnes raised with regards to the traffic, and also help pedestrians as they go even further up the bridle path on their way to the woodland right at the top of the road. So I do think the special circumstances exist, and I will be supporting the application, not rejecting it. Thank you.
Councillor Scroggy.
Yeah, I'm a bit conflicted about this myself, because it's that vehicle access that I'm concerned about. Effectively, we'll be turning that into a two-way road, and it could potentially cause accidents in the future. So I'm still on the fence.
Councillor Wheeler.
I've got no comments to make at this point, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Kate. This is a really, really finely balanced decision, and I'm going to be honest. My initial thoughts were to oppose the application to support the officer's decision, but I'm more and more coming round to the view that the special circumstances do exist. Well, we've got to accept that the building that is there at the moment is an eyesore. What is being proposed is undoubtedly a significant improvement. I think the use that it's being put to is a very important factor in terms of our consideration. I haven't fully decided yet, and I probably won't decide until almost until it comes to the vote. But my views are evolving on this, and as David has said, if we were to oppose their recommendation, it is absolutely no reflection on the planning officers. I think it is a very, very finely balanced decision.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Kate. I always welcome development of derelict buildings, but I've got grave concerns over access. There's a lot of bridleways, as Mike said, in Trent Valley, and having traffic coming up and down those at the same time is a total nightmare. I think with farmland vehicles that are already using that as an access, it can be easily managed because the farm knows when those vehicles are coming in and out. With a nursery or with houses, as you don't know where separate different timings will cause grave access issues there, and have an impact on that. And also the development is detrimental to the green belt and the openness must be protected. So I will be going with the officer's recommendation to refuse permission.
Councillor Truscott.
Thank you very much, Kate. Yes, well, this is obviously, as Councillor Wilkinson says, quite a finely balanced one. But, you know, I think we got to remember, I think that some of the debate has been rather emotive because what we're talking about is a day nursery. But, you know, what we've got to remember is that we have to abide by the planning regulations, and this is the green belt, which we are always at great pains to preserve. And you know, the case has been put forward that the footpath running on the other side of the hedge is going to mitigate the highway problems, but it means further deterioration of the green belt because that's all going to have to be tarmacked. As well as the car park. And I think all in all, I don't think that the applicant has identified sufficient very special circumstances that the local planning authority should give weight to. So I will be voting with the planning officers on this.
Okay, would anybody like to come back?
Please.
Was that Councillor Barnes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Chairman. It's important that we realise the junction of Red Hill Road and Mansfield Road. The traffic on Mansfield Road is colossal nowadays. We've just introduced a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit along Mansfield Road because we have problems on Mansfield Road. And more traffic coming off and onto Mansfield at that particular junction will make it more and more dangerous. As regards to the actual building, it's always been rural in that area, and I think it's a retrograde step to just put more traffic on that junction, on that road where it is. And I think the officers are dead right, and I will support the officers 99%. They're right. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence has his hand up. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I'd remind members that on page 54 down the bottom, and I mentioned the Highway Authority didn't have any objections in my original comments. It says the Highway Authority also advised that the junction onto the A60 and the link between the adopted highway and the public right-of-way are both satisfactory. So I took that into consideration, as I said earlier, in making my thoughts known. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, would you like to come back?
Thank you. Just on the highway point, my concern, Councillor Peter Barnes is absolutely right about the junction with the A60 being extremely busy, but my concern still remains about the bridle. If you have farmland traffic going up, that's easy to manage because you can schedule the times of arrival and departure of those vehicles. When you have a day nursery, they can turn up and whenever they like. It's going to cause huge problems along the bridleway of vehicles passing each other. It happens in Trent Valley all the time. And again, the development is detrimental to the greenbelt, so we should stick with the officer's recommendation and refuse the proposal.
Okay, any more?
No.
Are you content if I move to the vote? Recommendation on page 63 of your agenda papers, and it is to refuse planning permission. So remember, when you vote for, you're voting for the recommendation to refuse. I'll ask Kate to run through the roll call of councillors to record their votes. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Barnes.
To support the officer's recommendation.
For.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor David Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Elwood.
For.
Councillor Hope.
For.
Councillor Keneally.
Against.
Councillor Lawrence.
Against.
Councillor Paling.
Against.
Lost it.
Councillor Scroggy. Councillor Scroggy.
Abstain.
Councillor Wheeler.
Abstain.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
For the refusal of the application.
And Councillor Truscott.
For.
Okay, so we have 6 for and 6 against, and 3 abstentions.
I'll cast my shares for.
Councillor Truscott, sorry.
Yeah, I use my shares casting vote for.
Okay. Okay. So that was carried, Chair. Thank you.
Right, we go on to item 7 of the agenda, which is application 2020/0827. Arnold Market, Hallam's Lane, Arnold. Construction of 2-storey business enterprise building and new marketplace, page 66 of your agenda papers. And note that there is a major typo on the final 5 lines that refer to agenda item 5.
I'm going to say you want to be excused.
And I have already stated our collective non-pecuniary interest in this item.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, can I be excused on this issue, please?
Well, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to nip home now. I'll catch you in a bit.
And Councillor Wheeler, sorry.
I think Councillor Wheeler has left the meeting. He's muted himself, and yeah,
That's
he's now
okay
left.
then. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So as everybody who are predetermined left, so I'll ask Mike Avery to introduce this application for us, please.
Thank you, Councillor Truscott. As highlighted by Councillor Truscott, for the avoidance of doubt, I'd like to clarify that the second sentence in the description of the proposal on page 66 is an error generated when the report was uploaded. Reference is made to the proposed development of Flats Lane, which members considered earlier this evening under agenda item 5. I apologise for this error. The proposal comprises the erection of a 2-storey building with a new public square to accommodate the Arnold Market and Town Centre event. The building would have a service yard to the rear, including 10 car parking spaces with an access from Gedling Road. The principle of redeveloping the site to enhance Arnold Market and the wider retail offer is supported by policies in the Aligned Core Strategy and the local planning document. The new building will provide 7 units at ground floor, primarily targeted at start-up businesses and flexible commercial space at first floor level. The building will be modern in design with a flat roof and have large glazed shot front windows and fascias facing the public realm. The facing materials will primarily be red facing brick with stone detailing. The building will fit comfortably within the streetscape, where buildings are typically 2-storey. The proposed building is modern and contemporary, but it picks up design cues from the existing built form, and I consider the approach respects of local vernacular. In my opinion, the building has been designed to an exceptionally high standard. The public realm improvements will be in the form of new paving, including natural stone and block paving, a granite seat wall, street trees, a planting bed, cycle stands, and the existing market stalls reinstated. The materials are high quality and would undoubtedly complement the building. The development as a whole would result in significant enhancements over and above the site as it currently stands, which is in significant need of improvements. Given the desire to improve Arnold's shopping experience and the market area in particular, this application will enhance the provision of retail units in the area, increasing its vitality with uses that are appropriate in a town centre location. Further to the publication of the report, an objection has been received from a member of the public in relation to the impact the development would have upon their existing views of Arnold Town Centre, and they have stated that they should be compensated. Loss of view over adjoining land is not a material planning consideration, and neither is the objector's desire to seek compensation. The proposal would lead to a loss of view from the side windows of the first floor flat located adjacent to the site. However, the proposal is not considered to be overbearing, given that the rear elevation of the proposal will be separated from the adjoining property by the proposed vehicular access. Paragraphs 7.8 and 7.9 of the report specifically assesses the impact on residential amenity, having regard to the long-established market use and the design of the rear elevation, which seeks to minimise overlooking. This section of the report concludes that the proposal would be policy compliant. Finally, the report considers the highway impacts of the proposed access arrangements and the level of car parking provision, which are both considered to be policy compliant. In conclusion, the principle of the development is fully supported in that it will result in the regeneration of Arnold Marketplace and enhance the vitality and viability of the Arnold primary shopping area without having an adverse impact on residential amenity or highway safety. I therefore recommend that the application is granted permission in accordance with the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mike. So there you have proposal number 2020/0827 for the construction of business enterprise buildings at the new marketplace. I'll formally move the application and chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second as vice chair.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll call of councillors. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, much said about the development in previous times, but just to reiterate, fantastic to see it here. Look forward to see it opening and improving the shopping experience and availability for Arnold and the wider Gedling residents.
Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you. This is on my patch, although obviously it serves a wider area. And along with the other residents, I'm keen to see something done. Just to be clear, I received the same advice as Councillor Barnes and Councillor Wheeler to consider whether I was predetermined, and I'm happy that I'm not predetermined, but I'm quite happy to look at the planning merits of this application. But having read the report, I agree with it. I think the proposals represent an improvement to the public realm, and I'll be supporting them. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Thank you. I support this application. I think it's going to be a major asset to the town of Arnold, and will help regenerate the Arnold Town Centre.
Councillor Elwood.
So I seem to have a problem with the connection there, so I'm back now. So I've no idea what happened.
Did you? Sorry, Councillor Elwood. Have you not been party to the rest of the debate?
I've only clicked out just as you were going down the list, so I don't know where are we at.
Sarah, what kind of advice can you give?
Oh, I see. We're at the voting stage. I see what you mean. Right.
Councillor Elwood, sorry, we're just still going through the roll call of members if they want to contribute to the debate on this.
Right, yeah.
Did you hear the presentation by Mr. Avery introducing the item and the comments that have already been made by the members before you?
I didn't hear the comments made before, so no, I think I heard the presentation. Then you were just going to the roll call of members, so I missed that bit. So
okay, I mean there's been no additional matters that have been raised or questions, so
yeah.
I'm happy for you to continue. So if you want to make your comments, and then we can carry on.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I was I support the recommendation of obviously in favour of the redevelopment of the site, and happy to vote for it. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
Yeah, very briefly. Clearly, this area needed improvement. This seems to be a real improvement to the public realm. Whether it's economically viable, I don't know. I hope it is, but certainly I support it all the way.
Councillor Keneally.
Yeah, this is a really positive development for the community, and I think it's much needed. So I'm really happy to support it.
Councillor Lawrence.
No comments.
Councillor Paling.
I've got no further comment. I'm very happy to support it.
Councillor Scroggy.
Yeah, everything's been said, so yeah, I've got nothing to add.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think this is an exciting development, definite improvement to the site and the location, and I'm happy to support as per the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, as what everyone else has said, it's a brilliant development. It will really improve Arnold, so I'm happy to support it. We just now need to start filling them units and get people down there.
Councillor Truscott.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fully in favour of it. It's a great plan, and the sooner it gets completed, the better for Arnold and the better for all of us.
Councillor Rachel Ellis, would you like to come back?
Yes, just to say that I momentarily lost connection and I missed what Councillor Keeling said.
There were no additional comments made by Councillor Keeley, so I'm happy for that to continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody want to come back? Any more comments? Or you're quite content as I move to the vote?
Okay.
Okay. Recommendation is on page 73 of your agenda papers, and it's to grant full planning permission subject to the conditions listed. I'll ask Kate to run through the roll call of councillors to record their vote.
Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
Oh dear.
Councillor David Ellis. Shall we come back to Councillor Ellis? Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
4.
Councillor Hope.
Join here.
Oh, okay.
I've
Councillor David Ellis.
I dropped out, but when he started taking the vote, I'm 4.
Thank you. Councillor Hope. Councillor Hope still with us? Come back to Councillor Hope.
Looks like he may have dropped. Oh, we have him back now.
That's it. Wonderful.
He momentarily dropped out. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Councillor Hope.
Oh, 4.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Paling.
4. I too momentarily dropped out, and I had to tell it that I was joining as a transfer. I didn't fully understand that at all. I had no idea.
No, nor did I, Marge.
Councillor Scroggy.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
Councillor Smith.
I dropped out there, Kate, on the vote, but I'm for.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Truscott.
I think everybody's preempting the break.
Four, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Okay, well, there we go. The end of item 7. And we now have a break.
Oh, good.
Okay. How long would you like, Chair? 5 minutes?
5 minutes, yep.